Greetings and welcome. Nice to have you here. My name is Jonathan Foust, and welcome to this webcast. This is a continued series on the 7 factors of awakening, which are so fundamental to practice. And we're going to start with a short meditation, and then I will be introducing the talk, which is a talk from a couple years ago. I think it's pretty good. So anyway, I hope you're well. Before we begin, some big thank yous. First of all, thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this, to Glenn Harrison, our producer, to our Mindful Movement leader, Rita Moran, thank you so much, and to our Mindful Dialogue leader, Ray Manioki. The full Monday night extravaganza, if you are so interested, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, you can join Rita for Mindful Movement. This starts at 7:30. And then afterward, a couple of minutes afterward, around 8:30 or so Eastern Standard Time, you can join with Ray Manioki, which is an opportunity to connect with like-minded people, share about your practice, complain about the talk, whatever comes to mind. Those Zoom links for Mindful Movement and Mindful Dialogue are available on my website and on my Facebook page. Thank you so much. Just to say, this is all offered freely. There's no charge. The whole idea here is that everyone should have full access to these practices and teachings. I think that's a really wonderful guideline. So it's offered out of love. And if you ever feel inspired to support this endeavor, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Alrighty then, let's start with a short meditation. This talk is on energy and vigor, which is an important part of what it means to wake up, especially when you hit the hard stuff. So when you're ready, let's say you could reach your arms up overhead. If that feels right for you, stretch up to the left side, the right side, deepen your breath. And then just let the arms float down in your own time. When you're ready, slow down the breath and just notice the effect. It might be helpful to count on the in-breath slowly to 4, and then right at the top of the inhalation, exhale slowly to the count of 4. This is an ancient breathing technique which has some very interesting effects. The more you slow down, the more you notice, the more you feel. And you might just notice where you feel the breath on the inside right now. Slow, deep, and full. This gathering of attention, this is a concentration and absorption technique. And you may notice how it brings you into contact with how you're feeling, to the energetic experience on the inside. So for just a few more rounds of breath, match the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. You might like to stay with this technique, or if you like, you can explore another option. That is to inhale slowly to the count of, say, 4, but then on the exhalation, let the exhalation be a little bit longer. Maybe exhaling to 5 or 6, and just notice the effect. And you might explore on the exhalation, adding a little bit of intention to soften even more, to relax even more, and just track this inner experience. How much more could you relax on the next 2 exhalations? And as you're ready, if it feels right for you, now release all control of your breath. Let your breath be unrestricted, free-flowing, effortless. and sense if it's possible to maintain a connection to the experience of your breathing, even though it's now unrestricted and free-flowing. What do you feel on the inside as you relax and notice? You might like to continue now with your attention on the breath. This is a classic primary anchor. If you're so drawn, if you're finding the breath difficult to listen to, you might use sounds instead. But the practice now is to sense if you can maintain a connection to the experience of this breath, or maybe the experience of the sound vibrations. When you notice the mind drifting, as it naturally will, notice if you can gently escort your attention back. Where is your awareness right now? Is it possible, without any any judgment, to simply notice and then explore if you can relax, soften, guide your attention back to this breath, these sounds, re-arriving in the here and now? You might notice when you are identified with a story or some narrative, and what it's like to sense what it's like to let that go, and then to experience again the energy, the sensation, the direct experience through the senses. One of the elements I love about this form of practice is just the clarity of the teachings. This is a practice that has all the lists, the Four Noble Truths, it goes on and on, all the lists. I don't have to go through them all right now, but one of them is the 7 factors of awakening. The 7 factors required to be awake, and in particular, when you're struggling. These 7 factors are not only important, they're critical. The first one is mindfulness, having access to non-judging awareness. To move from judging, comparing to this very clear sense of recognizing this is it. This is what is true. This is what is here. The second is the art of investigation, to actually turn your attention to explore the phenomena of what's arising in any given moment. There's a willingness that's required to do that. The third is really interesting. Another element that's required in a waking up is to have access to energy. You need energy. You need firepower. You need gas in the tank or juice in the batteries to do this practice. So the following talk is about exploring this. What does it mean to cultivate energy and vigor, not only in your practice, but in your life, to work with whatever arises? I hope you enjoy the following talk. So many blessings in your practice. I'd like to tell you about a toothpaste factory. A toothpaste factory had a problem. They sometimes shipped empty boxes without the tube inside. This is due to the way the production line was set up, and people with experience in designing production lines will tell you how difficult it is to have everything happen with timing so precise that every single unit coming out is 100% all the time. Small variations in the environment, which can't be controlled in a cost-effective fashion, mean you have to have quality assurance checks, all distributed across the line, so the customers way down in the supermarket don't get angry when they buy a box with no toothpaste in it. So understanding how important that was, the CEO of the toothpaste factory got the top people in the company together. They decided to start a new project, and they would hire an external engineering consultant to solve their empty box problem. The in-house engineering department was already too stretched to take on any extra effort. So the project followed the usual process. There was a budget, project-sponsored allocations, RFP, third parties selected, 6 months, with $8 million later, they had a fantastic solution. It came in on time, on budget, high quality. Everyone in the project had a great time. They solved the problem by using high-tech precision scales that would sound a bell and flash lights whenever a toothpaste box would weigh less than it should. And the line would stop. Someone had to walk over and yank the defective box out of it, press another button, which would restart the production line. So a while later, the CEO decides to have a look at the return on investment of the project, and he was blown away. No empty boxes ever shipped out of the factory after the scales were put in place. Very few customer complaints, they were gaining market share, and he thought to himself, that was money well spent. But then he looked closely at the other statistics in this report. It turns out the number of defects picked up by the scales was 0 after 3 weeks of production. It should have been picking up at least a dozen a day, so maybe there was something wrong with the report. He filed a bug against it, and after some investigation, the engineers came back saying the report was correct. The scales weren't picking up any defects because all the boxes that got to that point in the conveyor belt were good. So the CEO was obviously puzzled, and he went to the factory and he walked up to that part of the line where the precision scales were installed. But a few feet before the scale, there was a $20 desk fan that was blowing empty boxes out of the belt and into a bin. So we asked, and one of the workers said, "Oh, that. Well, one of the guys put it there because he was tired of walking over every time the bell rang." This is a series on waking up. And I really like that story because it really speaks to dealing with the problems that arise in life, and then how do we deal with them? How do you find solutions to the issues that arise in your life? We've talked so far about mindfulness, about seeing clearly. We've talked about investigation, about looking closer at what's happening in your experience. And I'd like to talk here about energy, about mental acuity, about sort of like intellectual vigor, but also to talk a little bit about physical vigor at the same time. The analogy, which is probably overused, is that when you want to wake up, you're swimming upstream. Not only are you swimming against the conditioning of your own experience, who wants to feel pain? We're all looking for pleasure. But you're swimming against the conditioning of our culture. Now, the Buddha allegedly said this 2,500 years ago, before email and before the internet, that you're swimming against the conditioning of your culture. This culture is not necessarily designed about celebrating when you slow down and sense what's actually happening. It's actually trying to get you to buy things to make you feel better and to buy things to make the pain go away. So I'd like to talk in the little bit of time I have with you. First, what does waking up really mean? And second, how do you work with and how do you cultivate mental energy and vitality? And how do you cultivate physical energy and vitality? And then how do you manage this? How do you more and more skillfully manage energy in life? I gave a talk on this topic a few months back, and I'll be offering a variation on my sharing here. And to me, this topic of energy and working with energy is so important because it's such a fundamental building block in your whole life. And you know what it's like when you've got lots of extra energy and you've got that mental acuity, how much life can be fun. Life can be, you enjoy the challenges, you enjoy exploring those edges. And of course, the times when your energy is low and you don't have the mental acuity and you don't have the physical energy to deal with what comes up, life is the opposite of fun. It gets incredibly discouraging. So waking up, and we're living in very challenging times. Months of dealing with COVID-19, but more than that, perhaps more than that, is our culture is waking up to the reality of systemic racism. And there is pain being unleashed. There's bad news and there's good news. The bad news is it's so painful. It's so hard to stay open to the raw reality that we're experiencing now. The good news, I hope, is that this is a healing crisis. That there are more and more people now aware of the almost inexpressible pain of generations of abuse. So in mindfulness, we explore these two wings. What exactly is happening? And then how are you relating to it? Inevitably, when there's any form of fear and helplessness result in trauma, we tend to unconsciously, as a way of self-preservation, to respond to it in different ways. One is fight, anger, aversion, blame. Another is flight, disassociation, going to your happy place so you don't feel what's here. And the third is to freeze, where you simply lock up. And it's been very powerful for me as I've explored my relationship to what is happening in our culture, to sense the different ways that I respond, from anger and aversion to just not wanting to feel, to feeling absolutely locked up in paralysis. recognizing this can be so, so helpful because it's integral in becoming more awake. And that wakefulness is not only waking up wisdom, your capacity to see it, or my capacity to see it, but also waking up my heart's capacity to hold it. So I'd like to tell you a little story of someone as a result of all the whole system shutting down, someone who recently lost her job. It was a good job. She really, really liked it. Furloughed. And she could begin to feel herself moving into a downward spiral. Many, many people, of course, are going through this. And so she told me how, because she's familiar with working with issues through this lens of the practice. If you're not familiar with the acronym of RAIN, it's always super, super helpful. The R is to recognize or realize what's happening. Just to name it sometimes can help to shift it. And then to ask yourself the A, can I allow it? Can I accept it? Can I make room for it? Sometimes you can't. The I is to investigate, to look closer. So what actually is this? Where does this live inside? And the N is to nourish what you find with loving kindness, with compassion and empathy. And so in her meditation, here came all the thought process around her job going away, and she could see it. And she began to just sense, well, can I be with it? This is an opportunity for me to really be with this. And then she had this sense of, no, I can't. And she thought, why can't I be with this? This is my life here. And she sort of thought, she kind of realized, I don't have the firepower. I don't have the energy to be with it. This is part of swimming upstream. Swimming against the difficulty of becoming awake, and swimming against the difficulty of all of the tension and all of the anxiety and all of the fear associated with her job. She couldn't be with it. And I would imagine that's happened to you. It's certainly happened to me. You know, when you sense, okay, here's an edge, here's a growth opportunity. I know this is important, but I don't have the energy, I don't have the willpower to hang out with this. Now, this is an integral part of the practice, because when you recognize something, you ask if you can be with it, and if you can't, it's very, very helpful and very wise to recognize that you can't. And as I like to say, you can let it know you see it. You can let it know another time when the conditions are different. You want to be with it. And then you can kind of like put brackets around it and let it know another time you'll come back. So we have discussed a little bit in the last couple talks, a little bit around these 7 factors of awakening, and I haven't named them all, so I wanted to take a little bit of time now to name these 7 factors that go into becoming more awake. We've talked about 2 of them so far. The first is about establishing mindfulness. Now, mindfulness, think of it as non-judging awareness. Think of it as viewing what's happening without the filter of greed, hatred, and delusion. Recognizing that when you're wanting life to be different or you can't see it clearly, you can't see. So that gets established through your practice. Viewing life without the filter of greed, hatred, or delusion. We talked about investigation, which is your capacity to actually look closer at what's arising, to kind of zoom in on the inner experience of what's arising. I'll be talking in this talk about energy, about cultivating vitality and vigor to stay on it, because you need firepower to do this. Another quality is joy, which seems, why would joy be part of awakening? But there can be a certain upwelling in discovery. As you become more awake, it can have a quality that's enlivening. And paradoxically, just as you need energy, you also need tranquility. You need to be able to relax, to receive the moment as it's coming. You also need concentration, which is your capacity to stay present to the unfolding that's happening inside. And you also need equanimity, that is to say, a certain kind of steadiness to ride the wave that you might be on. So these 7 faculties, mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity, they're all these qualities that when they come together, you are primed for riding a difficult wave or working with something really, really difficult. And when one of them is missing, in some ways, you're hindered. So these 7 qualities, these 7 factors of awakening are in stark contrast with what are referred to as the 5 hindrances, the 5 mental states that get in the way of seeing clearly. And that is the wanting mind, the aversive mind, the worried mind, the heavy, slothful, depressed mind, the doubtful mind. So when you're experiencing sloth and torpor, that kind of heaviness, joy and investigation and energy kind of counterbalance that to kind of help you come back into that clear seeing. When you're experiencing sort of a restlessness and worry, you'll find that relaxation and concentration and equanimity will help to balance that out, to cultivate, again, mindfulness, that balancing factor where you can, again, just sense, let me see this clearly for what it is. Can I view this experience without greed, without hatred, without delusion, without worry, without fear, without doubt? Because that lens will help you to come in contact with something very, very profound. So sometimes you can't be with what comes up in life. It's too much. You get flooded. It's re-traumatizing. And there it's very, very helpful to let it know you're aware of it, but let it know your intention is to be with it, because what you're wanting to do is fully be awake to it. So anytime you can't be with it, you can't see clearly. You don't have the capacity to drill into the details. You don't have the firepower. You're feeling the opposite of joy. You're feeling restless, agitated. You can't concentrate. There's no steadiness. Recognizing when those states aren't there, it's not an optimal time. So here we are exploring energy. Now, the word in Pali, the original language of the Buddha, is virya. And it has to do with energy and diligence, enthusiasm and effort in your practice. It's about engaging into what is wholesome. So it's that quality of mind that's unshaken and devoted, that just keeps going, that's just moving toward what is wholesome and what is most positive. Sometimes we develop that capacity out of a sense of anxiety. And there's one of my favorite teachers on Spirit Rock sat in the Zen tradition for a long time. And in this tradition, it's not uncommon to do long sitting meditations. And he had a little bit of pride around his capacity to sit still for long periods of time. And he was on a long retreat. And there was someone else who also had a fair bit of pride about how long he could sit. And so the retreat turned into this sitting war. Who could sit the longest? And I just love that, the image of these two warriors on their cushion trying to outsit the other and being very prideful around that. Of course, we do this in life all the time. Pride or ego forces us into pushing our edges, and we find ourselves in competition and really, really bringing energy and vitality from a place of not wanting to lose. But sometimes that sense of focus and absorption and vitality comes from joy, a certain kind of discovery. And maybe you've noticed this anytime you're really absorbed into a project or really absorbed into a relationship. It's just an effortless focus. Video games are brilliant at giving you just enough rewards to keep you engaged and keep you focused. So back to this story of the woman who recently lost her job. And she noticed how, because this event was such a surprise for her, how easily she was falling into a downward spiral. And as she was practicing in her investigation of her relationship to this, her mind was sort of cycling stories. I loved where I worked. I loved the people I worked with. I'm going to miss them. I'm going to miss this job. I'll never find a job that's this good, where I'm doing what I love and I'm part of an organization and I believe in their mission. There were thoughts of anxiety of, my skill sets are so unique. Am I gonna find another place where I can really be engaged? Am I at the point where I'm getting too old to rehire? In this practice of mindfulness, what is happening? A very powerful investigation is, of course, exploring it somatically. So how does that issue live on the inside? And she could feel the heaviness and the agitation and the restlessness. And it can be very helpful to try to find words that either modify or describe those sensations, because that can help you to really sense, so what exactly is this? And so she was sort of naming all the sensations, all the feelings on the inside, the heaviness, the pangs of sensation, the grip and the clench in her gut. She recognized there was sadness here. She recognized there was some grief. She recognized there was worry, a lot of worry and anxiety here. And then she realized, oh my gosh, there's anger here. And she thought, I thought I was depressed. What is this anger? Someone once said a while back that depression is anger without energy. And quite often, depression can be anger sort of turned within. And if you've ever had that experience of loss, losing a job, losing a relationship, losing a loved one, you're right there at the edge of the unknown. Here is something that you knew well, that it was comfortable, it was familiar, and it's changing. Those times of transition can be brutal. It's so hard to stay present, and we'll come back to this story in a moment. But I'd like to talk a little bit about kind of the Buddhist psychology here. What do we mean by awakening? These 7 factors of awakening. Is awakening a metaphor for something? Is awakening about being more conscious? What is it that you're waking up to? And my sense of this is that what you are waking up to and what we're all waking up to is reality. And I can go on and on this, but basically, what we're waking up to is more than just being a better person. It's more than being more productive, being better at your job, being a better communicator, better at managing your life. You're waking up to what is true. Meditation and mindfulness will help you be better. But this is also about waking up to reality, waking up to what was true thousands of years ago and what will be true thousands of years from now. And this mental property of resilience and vitality and focus and grit is what informs your practice. So you start on your path, you try things, you sense what works. Oh, maybe it's this. Oh, no, maybe it's this. And at some point you realize that your path is maybe unique. With all the traditions and practices and observances and restraints and techniques out there, what is your path? There are lots of paths that will tell you that they are the highest and the best and the most direct, but ultimately it's up to you to discern that for yourself. Something the Buddha allegedly said, you have to take responsibility for your own awakening. He said, be an island unto yourself and be your own refuge. That's such a powerful charge, because what it calls on is self-reliance. It's about how do you cultivate the dance of skepticism and healthy doubt with being open-minded and being open-hearted. When the Buddha allegedly said, don't believe a word of what I'm telling you, you have to verify this for yourself, that's a very, very powerful charge. So there's a phrase, I'm going to wreck the pronunciation, but this is in Pali, manivata abhikama, which means falter not, advance. This, of course, is an important part of our practice, your capacity to not falter, to advance. So as you're cultivating mental energy, mental vitality, part of what this is sort of fourfold. It's really exploring what is not wholesome that arises in your experience, and to the words often translated as eradicate. But basically, how do you let go? Or how do you let go of what is not wholesome? And how do you prevent the arising of what is not wholesome? And how do you cultivate wholesomeness? And with that which is already wholesome, how do you promote the growth of that? So it's really about sensing what is wholesome, what is not wholesome. How do you either avoid it or diminish it? And where you sense it, how do you grow it, and how can you continue to grow it? So this requires a certain amount of awareness, but of course, energy and determination. So there's an element, there are teachings here that are pretty strong about energy, grit, determination. And here's one of the lines from some of the original texts. The idler does not strive. Though young and strong, is full of sloth, who is weak in resolution. That lazy and idle person will not find the way to wisdom and the way to enlightenment. So basically, if you don't engage, you're not going to get anywhere. Another line. Though only my skin, sinews, and bones remain, and my blood and flesh dry up and wither away, yet never will I give up my quest and swerve from the path of rectitude and enlightenment. Pretty strong stuff. Now, a lot of these texts, it's important to point out, were written by male renunciates. So there's a lot of that quality of male focus. So you get phrases, die on the cushion, meditate like your hair's on fire. There's one classic teaching story of this aspiring student of the Dharma goes to join this meditation master down by the creek. And he says, I want to be enlightened. So the master grabs him by the head, sticks his head underwater, and kind of watches the bubbles almost stop. And then he pulls him out and he says, when you want to be enlightened, when you want to be enlightened as much as you want to breathe, come back and see me. That's pretty intense. So we have traditions that are all about focus, concentration, willpower. The Shaolin monks, they're known for their amazing strength and amazing skills. In 464 AD, kind of a traveling teacher who was a master of concentration from India made his way to China. And then those Shaolin martial arts in the 18th century were kind of exported to Japan. So that tradition of focus and concentration and will can be enormously powerful and something to cultivate. and at the same time. This is a path of the middle way, of balance, not too tight, not too loose. So I'd like to point out here that another faculty of awakening is tranquility and relaxation. We'll talk about that more. So cultivating mental energy and vigor is critical, absolutely important. And I assume the following story is true because I found it on the internet. It's an interesting one. I hadn't run across this one before. The giraffe gives birth standing up. So the first thing that happens to a newborn giraffe is a fall of about 2 meters. Still dazed, the baby tries to stand up on its 4 legs, but its mother behaves very strangely. She gives the baby giraffe a gentle kick, which sends it sprawling. It tries to get up and is again knocked down. The process is repeated until the newborn giraffe is too exhausted to stand. At that point, the mother kicks it again, forcing it to get to its feet. After that, she does not push the baby giraffe over again. The explanation is simple. In order to survive predators, the first lesson a giraffe must learn is to get to its feet quickly. The mother's apparent cruelty finds support in an Arabic proverb. Sometimes, in order to teach something good, you have to be a little rough. And I think it's safe to say that most of our growth, most of our expansion comes through challenge. It comes through difficulty. So just as you're cultivating your mental state of vigor and vitality, it's also critical that you explore your physical state. So back to our friend who was exploring what it was like to lose her job. When she had this recognition that what she was calling depression actually had some anger to it, a light bulb came on. And she realized how much aversion she was holding about this, and most of it was turned inward. She recognized, I'm beating myself up so badly. I've been telling myself it's my fault, and I recognize now I'm not the only one being let go. I've been offered to apply for other jobs in the organization, but as she sat with it, she realized there was a lot of shame here. She felt ashamed that she couldn't provide for her family. She felt ashamed in regard to her parents and how they might judge her. This essential sense of just being not good enough. The antidote for this is the call on loving presence. And so what she did was she just gently brought her hand to her heart and just, without trying to fix it, just sensed, can I offer this some empathy? Can I offer myself a little compassion or kindness? And she began to feel a shift. She began to feel something softening a little bit, kind of letting go. You know, it's interesting. I've had just the blessing of working with people over these years, working with issues that arise. And quite often at the end of an inquiry of recognizing, allowing, doing a deep somatic investigation into how that issue is held, in the nervous system, I'll oftentimes ask, well, what do you need? What advice do you have to give yourself? Can you listen to your body and speak from that energy in the body? And I'm so surprised that quite often, or let me tell you what people don't say. I need to work harder. I need to focus more. I need to grit my teeth and force myself through this. Quite often people will say, I need to be outside in nature more. I need to move my body more. I need to get more rest and take care of myself. And this to me speaks so beautifully of how when you can begin to sensitize and cultivate your capacity for more energy and a life force and vitality physically, how that informs the whole rest of your life. I've noticed quite often when I go away on retreat, on a meditation retreat, I'm sleeping, I'm eating, I'm sitting. I'm not engaging into my anxiety, but I'm just sensing what it's like to keep letting go and keep letting go. Inevitably, I start feeling better. I start feeling more alive. And inevitably, what I think is, I'm going to go home and start cleaning out some closets. I can't stand this clutter. And you know that feeling? Maybe you don't, but maybe you've had that feeling of like, at some point you realize, I can't take this clutter anymore. And I think it's a very interesting thing. It's, in a way, it's a little woo-woo, but it's a little vibrational. Your vibration is like here. And then you engage in these, whatever practices they are that have you kind of getting more energy, maybe just working out or changing your diet or meditation or yoga. But then your energy is kind of up here. And when your energy is up here, you realize how much you were tolerating down here. And that cultivates some kind of a shift. And maybe it's just recognizing how the physical clutter in your life is kind of a psychic clutter in your life. But it can also include your friends. It can include activities. All these things that were kind of like a vibrational match before are no longer really a vibrational match. And that's what this practice is all about. It's becoming more alive and more awake and more aware. And as your vibration, if you will, shifts, as you become more vital and more alert, then there's more and more that you were tolerating before that just not tolerated anymore. You can't do it anymore. Way back, many years ago, I used to go to a doctor of Chinese medicine who was, his father and grandfather were doctors, and he did a lot of healing through herbs and so forth. And he was originally from northern Vietnam, I believe. And so he would take your pulse, and then he would kind of look at you, and then say a few phrases, and then he would go in the other room and chop up all these wild stuff that you'd put into a tea and boil it down from 2 quarts to 1 cup and drink that half cup. But every time I went to him, he'd take my pulse and he'd look at me, and he would say, "Rest more, eat more." Every time. Rest more, eat more. Which was exactly what I needed to hear, because I was in a time in my life when I was grim and I was focused. So when we talk about balance, sometimes we need energy, sometimes we need more calm. Coffee, ooh, it's so stimulating, it's so much fun. Too much? Well, then you're like a chipmunk on speed. Spicy food, so much fun. Too much fire, too much upset. Binge watching Netflix and sitting back on the sofa, so much fun. But then it becomes kind of deadening. Sleep, so important, so restful, but too much, then you're spiraling downward. That in-between place, that's the sweet spot. So with just a few minutes left, let's do a 1-minute inquiry. If you like, you can close your eyes. When you think of your energy, just your vitality, anything you choose to do will have 3 results. One is it's going to give you energy, or it's going to deplete you in some way, or it will be revenue neutral. And you might just in these moments, just reflect, what are 3 things that you're doing now in your life that in some way deplete you? What are 3 things in your life that give you energy, that enliven you? And if you like, you can open your eyes. I highly recommend this exercise. Just get out a piece of paper, name all the things that are depleting you, name all the things that give you energy. And when you look at the things that deplete you, you can sense, does this require an internal change or something I need to change externally? And having that list of what gives you energy, put it somewhere where you can see it. So when you find yourself spiraling down, oh yeah, going for a walk or dancing around the house or whatever it may be. So cultivating mental energy. One of the things, I'll just leave you with one thing that I found helpful, and that is to ask yourself why you are engaging into an activity. Why am I going to work today? Well, perhaps it's to provide for your family, to provide security for yourself, to make a difference in the world. And you may find taking time just to sense that why has an emotional quality to you, that may actually lift your spirits. Why am I going to make this phone call? Oh, well, it's to listen and let this person know I care. Or maybe it's because I really want to get this done because this project means a lot to me. Why am I meditating? Well, perhaps it's to calm and gather your attention so you can move toward what's most important in your life. Great question. Why am I talking right now? That's always a good one. Cultivating vitality in the body, again, is very much just sensing, what do you need? What is your body telling you? If you really listen, it's surprising sometimes how a gentle voice might have some suggestions. Knowing what you want, knowing what is most important, is so powerful. And if you don't know what the most important thing in your life is, then it's helpful to make knowing that most important thing the most important. Because when you have a sense of purpose, that can be a very powerful way of enlivening energy, of bringing your energy together to move toward whatever that is. And it may be on the broadest standpoint about being awake to reality. That's ultimately what is informing our practice, to know who and what you truly are. And along the way, it may be reflecting on what's most important in your life in the realm of relationships and your commitments, of how you want to feel at the end of this life, to be able to look back with a sense of satisfaction and with a sense of gratitude and a sense of appreciation. Let's take just a few moments before we close. This will be a short yet brief yet truncated meditation. If you would, close your eyes and take 3 slow, deep breaths. Take a moment to relax and feel. And you might just in your own way, just to make contact with this sense of mental vitality. A mind that is unwavering in what is most important. That is called to know what true happiness is, what it means to be free from stress, what it means to be awake, and what it means to have a heart that is so open it can hold everything. And you might sense the breath, sense the body right now. And allow yourself to imagine you could be more receptive to inspiration and information from your body that can help you cultivate a greater sense of aliveness and vitality. If you like, you can open your eyes, you can deepen your breath. In times of challenge, and particularly we are living now in challenging times, it's more and more important that we all practice radical self-care so our cups can feel full and overflowing, so we can remember what's most important, and can we move toward that with greater wisdom and with greater compassion. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I wish you well. May your energy feel alive and vibrant, and may your path feel rich and full. Thank you so much.